Well, welcome to another edition of 42nd Street Pete's Grindhouse. And honestly, all the writers and anybody involved in this magazine should be really flattered and humbled because something happened where I have sold about a dozen of these to Canada despite the high shipping. I've sold one to the UK despite the high shipping, even to Norway despite the high shipping. It's very humbling and flattering that people all around the world want to read what we did and are willing to pay ridiculous shipping prices for it. So be proud, guys. We're doing the right thing here. Even though we can't get it on Amazon yet, we're still working on that. Today's story, boys and girls, I have to delve into something a little bit weirder. There's been a lot of exploiters out there, and they all have had, colorful stories told about them, like David Friedman and Nick Phillips, S.S. Millard, Kroger Babb, and Sony, people like that. But there's a couple exploitation guys that came in late in the game that their whole history is sort of shrouded in mystery. And one of these guys is Jerry Gross, who created Cinemation. And I have to go for a reference, unfortunately, to the Sleazoid Express book. Now, whether what I'm about to tell you is true or not is debatable, because, of course, we all know that Bill Landis came on the scene in the mid-'80s. So he had written something about Jerry Gross in this book. Jerry and his childhood friend, Nick, unpronounceable Greek name, so I'm not going to try to even pronounce it, were film fans going back years ago and used to go see everything on 42nd Street. And they wanted to get into the business. So they formed Cinemation. And the first thing they released was an import called Mondo Cane in 1963 from Time Films. And we all know the history of Mondo Cane. If not, I can do another, video about it. Around that time, they decided they wanted to make their own film. But they didn't know how, the tricks of exploitation. But they did know of a guy whose name was Mike Rips, who was a southern-based exploitation guy, another guy whose work is shrouded in mystery and his life shrouded in mystery. But anyway, they wanted to get these guys' attention, according to Landis. So they put an ad in Variety saying that they were going to make a film called Poor White Trash. Of course, they got a cease and desist from Mr. Rips because he owned the title. Well, that sort of was the introduction, and if you want to believe this, fine. If you don't, there's a lot of bullshit going on with Landis' stuff. It seems that he would meet them on his trips to New York to talk to other exploiters, and supposedly for $100 he would sit down and teach them the tricks of exploitation. Now again, this happened in the 60s, supposedly. Where Landis got this information from, I have no idea, unless he picked up an old copy of Variety. The problem I have with all of this is that this guy started out life in New York as a projectionist for a shitty, gay fucking grindhouse. And really never worked for Avon, worked for Shelley Wilson, who really wasn't Avon. So like I said, you got to take this with a grain of salt, that they had these meetings with Mr. Rips, and Mr. Rips sort of mentored them. But anyway, their Poor White Trash actually was the Girl on a Chain Gang, and that was Girl on a Chain Gang was 1966. So basically, it was a southern-based movie about, racial intolerance in the South and this and that and the other thing, shot in Long Island. And it did have its points. I mean, it did expose, the intolerance and the nightmarish shit that went down in the South during the 60s with the civil rights violations and all the other shit. It still is a rough film to watch today. But that sort of opened the door for Jerry. So they brought in another import film called Africa Adito, made by Jacopetti and Prospero, the two gentlemen that made Mondo Cane. The film was originally over 2 hours long. What Cinemation did was take it, edit 45 minutes of nonviolent footage out, and put it out as Africa Blood and Guts. Of course, the makers of the film poo-pooed it off. They said this wasn't their film, but again, here's where Jerry shined. He imported a film, tricked it out, and changed the title and come up with a trailer campaign that was guaranteed to draw people into the theater. Actually, Jerry wasn't the only one doing this. He might have been one of the first, though, because, of course, Joseph Brenner of Joseph Brenner Associates was doing the same thing, bringing in import films like Deep River Savages and retitling them The Man from Deep River, and then retitling that Sacrifice. Terry Levine from Aquarius Releasing would also do the same thing down the road. So the boys decided to make another couple films. One of them was Teenage Mother, starring Jerry's then wife. I think her name was Arlene. And Arlene is cast. This is another like social commentary thing from an exploiter. Basically, it covered teen pregnancy, lack of sex education in schools, drug abuse, and pornography. Well, you see, this wonderful high school has a guy named Tony who's going out with this girl, and he's studying to be a doctor. This girl wants to get married, of course. And there's a little thing going on in school. There's a dope and pornography ring. The guy who's running the ring is this really creepy guy with fucked up teeth who never has a real name. And he hangs out with a creepy janitor in the school, and they're using a guy named Duke, a bad guy named Duke. Everybody in the 50s who was bad was named Duke. Duke is kind of a fucking douchebag, because Duke reacts to weed the same way reefer madness people react to weed. And they open it up and he goes, that type of shit, which is, pretty ridiculous today, but of course weed was the weed with the roots in the hell, the devil's weed and all this other shit. So anyway, Duke is selling weed and selling porn, and Tony wants nothing to do with it, but they bring in this new teacher, Miss Peterson from Sweden, who was going to teach sex ed. And of course, some of the staff is for it, some's against it. And when she goes to the library to make sure this book is in stock, the crusty librarian says, "That's filth, and that filth will never be in my library." Yeah, like you get laid, lady. But anyway, Duke decides in a marijuana haze to go in and rape the teacher, which he tries, and he's almost there until he's surprised by the coach. And the coach is the first film appearance by none other than Fred Willard. So she claims nothing happened. Now, Tony's girl, and why can't I remember what the fuck her name is? Oh my God, I'm terrible with this shit. Oh man. All right, I gotta look this thing up here because I'm being stupid and not prepared. Arlene, because his girlfriend's name was Arlene Farber. I keep forgetting this shit. That's why I write shit down. Arlene decides to seduce Tony on the beach. And next day she goes to a doctor, and the doctor tells her that she's not pregnant. And she goes, "Can I be a little pregnant?" No. Well, she decides to tell Tony that she's pregnant. Of course, Tony blurts out, "What am I going to do about college?" Not what she wanted to hear. Of course, she tells her parents Tony knocked her up, and she hits the road hitchhiking. She leaves her room. She gets picked up by a trucker. And the trucker stops off at a diner, and who's at the diner but Dookie and his pals. And Dookie decides that Arlene's going to be his girl from now on. So they decide to go to a drive-in where, guess what's playing? Girl on a Chain Gang. So they're at the drive-in, and Duke is telling Arlene, we got to make out, we got to do something or make me look bad. Well, Arlene doesn't want it. So right away, Tony's following the trail and winds up at the diner, and the cook who was abused by Duke's boys and didn't pay said they went to a drive-in. So now Arlene jumps out of the car and is being trailed by the cars with Dookie's disciples in it. And Duke is going to rape Arlene in this little circle of fucking cars until Tony comes in and beats the fuck out of Duke. But there's another plot twist. The evil little pornographer gives the janitor a joint to put porn pictures in Miss Peterson's drawer. So now they're basically having a kangaroo court at the school while all this shit's going on at the drive-in. So they also expose this whole deal that, what she's teaching is dirty and filthy and stuff like that, and she has a film. And the film is a birth of a baby footage that Jerry bought for $50 from a hospital. So, here we go, roadshow madness. What roadshow didn't have the birth of a baby? And you get color birth of a baby footage. So basically a bunch of guys that had never seen a real live vagina got to see one until the baby's head popped out. So anyway, Arlene gets back to the school to tell everybody she's not pregnant, it's not the fault of the sex ed teacher, and the creepy janitor is exposed, and everybody lives happily ever after. That's what happens. So, like I said, it touched on a bunch of things that were socially relevant back then. Teen pregnancy, weed, porn, sex ed. You had it all. Next, he put Arlene in a film called Female Animal. That was in 1970. Jerry liked to fuck with the MPAA. He hated them. And he would put stuff out like The Seducers and just slap an R on it and hope he didn't get caught. Well, he hired a director named David Durston to make a horror movie, which would become I Drink Your Blood. And he said, I don't want ghouls because of Night of the Living Dead. And here's the weird thing. There's actually a little fucking banner on a wall in this film that says Night of the Living Dead was playing somewhere. So a little homage there. But anyway, he didn't want ghouls. He didn't want vampires. So Durston remembered this story he read about a rabies outbreak in Iran where a bunch of people died. So he came up with this idea, basically, to have this devil cult that goes into this broken down town, and they abuse this girl, and there's very few people living there, and basically the girl's grandfather goes to get revenge because they're in this decrepit hotel, because the town's a ghost town. There's only some construction workers living there. And they slip the old man acid, and he has a bad trip. So the little grandson, Petey, or Peter, or whatever the fuck his name is, shoots a rabid dog and draws a syringe full of blood out and injects it into meat pies that he gives to the devil worshippers the next day for breakfast. Well, it gets really fucking weird and creepy after that as they get rabies and things happen. Well, a lot of the things that happened in the film were cut out, and this is what happened. Jerry decided he would again bypass the MPAA. But he pre-booked this film in like 200-something theaters on the East Coast. He had to go before the MPAA and they slapped an X on it. Well, it was too late to yank back the prints, so he told all the exhibitors to edit the film according to your community standards. That's why there's so much missing from the film, and that's why the film was cut to shit, in some cases made no sense, and a lot of shit was taken out. Of course, now Grindhouse Releasing got a hold of it and edited it all back in, and it looks fucking great. But some of the things that were taken out were, let's see, a guy getting stabbed 10 times on a table, a leg getting cut off, a gangbang with the construction workers and the one hippie girl who infects the whole bunch of construction workers. Let's see, did I say a leg getting cut off? I think I did. The Asian woman's setting herself on fire, the pregnant girl impaling herself on a branch, and a creepy alternate ending. So basically, Jerry was kind of fucked, and this thing went out all beat to shit. And like I said, it played like that for years. My own history with this is I saw it at a drive-in. It was paired with another film that Jerry picked up, a Del Tenney clunker called Voodoo Bloodbath that he changed to I Eat Your Skin. No skin is eaten. But when I saw this at a drive-in, I Eat Your Skin played first, and it kind of sucked. And the one zombie there got shot. He was holding a sparkler to his stomach and fell overboard. Anyway, I'm with three guys who weren't crazy into horror films. We also had a Coleman heater because it was the dead of winter. So as I Drink Your Blood came on and it got worse and worse, there was mumblings in the car about leaving me up here to freeze my ass off because of me dragging them to this fucking movie. Well, what happened was it got so cold that the Coleman heater lit, started the car seat on fire. And it was one of those things where, okay, I had to go, I was the only one with money, I had to go buy 2 large Copes to put it out because everything was fucking frozen. So that sort of redeemed myself, but these guys never went to the movies with me again. Well, right after that, Cinemation was in Chapter 11. And what saved Cinemation from going completely under was a gentleman named Melvin Van Peebles had made a movie called Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, and he made it from his pay from directing The Watermelon Man for Columbia, and the fact that Bill Cosby fronted him $50,000 and a repayable loan. I don't want a piece of the movie, don't want my name connected with it. Yes, this is Roofie Bill that fronted Melvin the money. Problem was, no one would touch this movie. Well, he went to Jerry Gross, and Jerry was desperate, and they cut a deal. Basically, after this film cleared $5 million, Melvin was entitled to 50% of the profits. Now, the other problem was that most of the newspapers wouldn't take an ad. So Jerry's whole thing was, we have to have this film in your face and keep it in your face. So they had lines like, they bled my mama, they bled my papa, but they won't bleed me, and rated X by an all-white jury. Jerry slapped up one sheets all over Manhattan, no matter wherever he could put them, and Sweet Sweetback's badass song was the birth of the blaxploitation film. It did well, but it didn't save Cinemation from going into Chapter 11. Well, Jerry came back with the Jerry Gross organization. And he went back to bringing in imports. And the one import that he did bring in that fucking broke the bank was Zombie. And again, no matter where there was a blank spot on a construction wall in Manhattan, that rotting worm-faced zombie poster was slapped up. Catch lines, we are coming to eat you, and if you like Dawn of the Dead, you'll eat up Zombie. Had a relentless ad campaign, radio spots all over the place. Same summer he imported the Boogeyman and a couple other things. But the problem was that the majors had taken over, and it was harder and harder for guys like Jerry to get distribution. So JGO folded up, and he started Ambassador Pictures, and that's where I lost track of the whole thing because Jerry died. I believe he was in his early 60s in Los Angeles, and I think I had read this in the Gore Gazette that he was found dead in his office with an empty bottle of vodka. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But again, here's a guy that, very little is known about, but was a huge, huge force in the exploitation business from the mid-60s right up until the 80s. And he has a huge legacy that he left as far as film goes. Some of it you might agree with, some of it you might not. But he was one of those guys that, these guys that I love, the rebels, the exploiters, the ones that basically thumbed their nose at the fucking business and did what they want and got away with a lot of shit. And I went back and revisited I Drink Your Blood last night, and I can just tell people, get the Blu-ray from Grindhouse Releasing. It's beautifully done, a lot of great extras. One of the extras is I Eat Your Skin with commentary from Bill Greffy, who was probably the only guy left involved in that film because, according to Bill, Del Tenney couldn't take the Florida heat, so Bill finished all the scenes that were shot in Florida, which is basically most of the movie. So that's our show for today. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to all the new subscribers. And thanks for all the people who have already purchased Grindhouse Resurrection. If you want to get a copy, it's real simple. PayPal $15 to Mr. 42nd Street Pete at yahoo.com. MR42ND, Street spelled out, Pete spelled out at yahoo.com. And all those that have purchased already, I hope you're enjoying it. We all thank you very much. And we're looking forward to more. We're already working on issue 3, so hang in there. We'll catch you on the flip side.